What is going on, guys? BN. I'm back again today for another video. Now today I want to talk about something that I think is really important in Kingdom Builders, and specifically Infinity Kingdom, because again, that's what we're talking about. Now I get this question often where people will ask me, hey boss, this is my situation in my server, right? Should I stay? If so, what are my options? Should I leave? If so, what are my options? And I find that this is becoming a increasingly more prevalent question that I am getting based on the videos that I put out for how we do things in Server 8. And I think when you have players that look at the structure that we have here, right, with the great team that we have here in S8 compared to kind of what they're seeing developing in other servers or newer servers, right, people are starting, I think, to realize, one, how vastly important it is to have some form of structure when you're going into a new server, right? And you can get this from one of two ways. One, you can do it from just banding together and having an early, an early level of communication and discussion that you take or you proactively take with other top alliances, right, within the first couple days of the server, up to the first week. Or you just go into a server with a large enough group, similar to how we did it in S8, where you act as a deterrent, right? Like, we're not in here to tell people what to do, right? For us in S8, it's more of we came in with a big group because we wanted to have a presence where the server wouldn't just get rampaged by rogue whales, right? Or it wouldn't just get rampaged by a top alliance who just wants to take all of the best cities and then leaves the scraps for everyone else, right? Similar to kind of what you have going on in S5. Shout out to my boy Yore. I'm still wishing you the best of luck there, bud. And so right, these are situations that can come up. And so today we're just going to briefly talk about that. I'm going to give you guys a server example. We're actually going to take a look at server 10, and I'm just going to give you a brief rundown of what I personally think some of the options are if players decide to stay in this server or if you decide to leave, right? And I'm not going to sit in shameless plug or anything, because all of you guys kind of already know, for people that have been watching my videos, what S8 is about. But as always, you can come. So let me dive right into it. So we're taking a look, as I said, server 10. Now, as I just liquefy my parched vessels, let me show you real quick. Let's just start off with how old is server 10. Right, so server 10 is here, and it is 18 and a half days old, right? Now let's take a look at how the map looks. So, pretty red dominant. I think they're in their first contention of relics right now, and as you can see, even red has, pretty much everything. I thought I was going to be able to click on that. Okay, yeah. And then, right, you got green that has one, but it's pretty much like a red, green, and then kind of blue dominant map. Now let's take a look at the rankings. So rankings we have, let's just go from top down on global. Top 3 are all red, right? Then you have green, 2 red, green, and then you finally see the top blue here at 13, 13 respectively for their power, right? And the next one's there at 13. So that's a pretty wide power gap. If you look at 25 mil to 13, right, that's a 12 mil gap. Even you have 5 and then you have 8 mil respectively for the number 2 and number 3 when comparing to the number 8 spot, right, for the top blue. Even on green, right, you have 118, which again the power probably can't necessarily compete with any at the top, and then you have 14, right, which again could maybe only compete with the number 6. So there's a huge imbalance here, right, of faction power and just faction alliance power, right? And faction power really isn't specific for faction power, but for the faction's alliance power specifically. Now let's look at strongest players on the server, right? So you have, let me see, 104, 100, right? Top green's 92, then you have red, 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 and then you have the big power drop here at around the 60, what is it, 60 to 70k. And then the next green is 67. All red, all red, all red, all red, all red. Oh, bejesus. Okay, now you have blue at 47, red, and then you have green, right? So that's what? 1, 2, let me see, sorry, what position is that? Let's just double check this real quick. So from the top 31, you have 4 players that are not red in the top 31. So again, just to show you an example of kind of where the imbalance is coming from, or at least how it looks here on the server, right? So here are the options that I usually give people, because I think this is really important. Now, let me start off with, it is as I've said before, it is so. I cannot stress it enough, right? The value that servers really should put on when it comes to unifying early. Now, this can be done in a few different ways, right? The way that S8 does it is probably going to be somewhat different than maybe how other future organized servers do things. Right, in our server, we're just testing out having an equal balance for all three factions. Some servers might just want there to be one faction, maybe two, maybe three like we do in S8. Right, I want to point out that there is no right or wrong way, in a sense, to manage you running a 1, 2, or 3 alliance, or a 1, 2, or 3 faction-based server, right? Now, the one thing I will say that is just inherent with whenever you cut out 1 or 2 factions is that you're just losing out on those faction 5% buffs, right? That you get, that some of you notice when you're starting your account and you're picking your faction color. It'll tell you get a 5% buff for shieldmen, spearmen, or cavalry, right? Depending on the faction that you choose. That's really probably the biggest downfall, and we don't really know if there's going to be anything else, right? Like, there could be some future impacts that happen from server versus server whenever that map and the rules and the format is introduced. That may or may not have an impact. We just don't know, right? So in S8, that's just why we opted to kind of have this jack of all trades, kind of even Steven approach, so that way we're at least covered, right? Most of our bases are hopefully covered. Now, in this server, right, what I will say is that if you plan to stay in S10, right, it is pretty heavy, right? And you can tell based on the power right now, and from at least some reports that I've heard, that the server's leaning red, right? It's going to go red, and unless anything changes, right, red is probably going to be the dominant powerhouse. So if you choose to stay, depending on how aggressive and we could take a look real quick and see actually how aggressive it is. If we look at Lord Honor, we could take a look, right? So this guy, Cruel Teps, right, probably a rogue player. Maybe he's going around hitting people, or maybe he's just doing nothing but hitting red. You can see the top red players. For this early, for these power points this early in a server, this tells me that they're most likely going around and just attacking people, right? Now, maybe they could be hitting their farms, but to get this high in the honor points, you have to be going around and attacking a lot of people. My just base level analysis would lean towards they're probably going around and just attacking anyone that isn't red, right? But maybe they are also doing red as well, but that's just what this looks like based on how high the points are already. So with that in mind, there's a few options if you would decide to stay in this type of a kingdom, right? Is that you join red and you potentially just kind of, protect yourself from maybe being hit. And you also get to kind of share in the benefits of red, especially for Contention of Relics events, because some of the rewards there were great that you get, especially even after the event ends. You could try and join one of the top green or blue alliances, right, who's ever closest to the top reds, and then maybe there's some kind of pact that you can make where you can still operate and maybe have some districts to yourself. Let's say you end up joining blue, and which I probably wouldn't recommend just based on the rankings right now for how it looks like, but maybe you could do the same thing as green does, right? You just reach out to the top people, maybe there's some kind of thing that can happen, or red just comes out and says, no, I want to run the whole thing. So it just depends, right? If there's an option to work together, fantastic. If not, they want to run the whole thing, then your best bet at that point is really just to spend the 2k gems, green gems, and switch over to red. Or let's say you decide not to stay. Then the option at that point would be putting yourself in the best situation that you can, to where you minimize the risk of getting hit or attacked, so you can keep growing your account and then eventually migrate it out once a server that you'd like to go to hits 90 days, right? That's the thing about migration, is that you can go forwards or backwards, but you just have to wait for a server to hit 90 days old, right? And then obviously whenever it's not in SVS, because I would imagine they would probably put a restriction on that. But again, that's where I'm at now. We're almost at about 10 minutes now. I'm probably going to cut it here shortly, but I just wanted to kind of go through some pros and cons as using an example server to show you, one, how important it is to really have these things set from the beginning, because also keep in mind, right, server versus server has been announced now, right? Not officially as far as in any kind of detailed formats or any rules or further context, but we know it's in development. And that really should be what the end game goal is for any server, right? It's how do we prepare our server for server versus server in the best way that we can, right? So we can retain as many active players as possible, and we can put ourselves in a position to where we can have as much activity as possible for when server versus server comes up. Because keep in mind, you can be the ruling faction, you can be a 1-2 ruling faction system, you can be the top alliance that has all the best cities, or 2 alliances that have all the best cities. But when SVS comes up, right, you need activity. You need players that are going to fight for your server, right? So keep in mind that there's pros and cons depending on if you have a small amount or a small group or faction that has everything versus sharing it with more people, right? So those are just things you kind of have to weigh when you're looking at building a server. But the most important thing at the end of the day is to have at least to have open communication, right, with the top alliances in your server. In SA, right, we have open communication with the top 30 alliances, if not more, just depending on how many we have in our SA council server now. But those are some things that I think can benefit. I hope you guys enjoyed this video with me, again, giving you this example breakdown of a server and just letting you know my kind of analytical thoughts on the situation. If you guys ever want any advice or information or help, as some of you have already done, you guys have joined our server, we've done some voice calls, you guys are more than welcome to join, add me on Discord as well. All of that information is in the description down below the video, along with official Infinity Kingdom resources. And if you guys are ever looking to get more content, as always, sub to the channel, right, hit that notification bell so you guys can get those daily, or at least whenever I post a video. And another thing, and this is the last thing I'll leave you with, we may start doing something on the official IK server, which might be like weekly meetings where we just kind of do like a cool community town hall for people. This is something we've been talking about doing because we do weekly town halls on Tuesdays in our server for S8, and then just for our syndicate multi-game community as well, where we just do a lot of kind of open Q&A floor questions. We kind of go over our S8 status and do some other things like that that a lot of players find extremely beneficial. So look out for maybe a video in the future about that too as well. That's it for me. I'm out. Peace.